Thank you, Dan, for inviting me to participate in this workshop. I grew up in Barbados, and from my window I could see the ocean as a child growing up. And I do spend quite a bit of time in Cape Breton, actually Nova Scotia, in the summers now, on the ocean. And so I've always been drawn to the ocean, but until Dan mentioned this workshop to me, I hadn't really realized the extent to which looking at Barbados, which is what I'm doing, was really also about looking at the ocean and how much the ocean was actually part of my experience. So for this project today, I want to bring together two projects as they relate to the sea, one on Barbadian family history, and the other on fiction relating to Barbados, which is some of the things that I'm currently working on. And I want to do that by focusing on the sea menagerie, in particular sharks and octopuses. And so I'm going to draw from white Barbadian family history, which is my history, a story of the sea as an entry point into the island's plantation history. I then relate this to S.E. Edugyan's Washington Black, where the brutality of the Barbadian plantation necessitates the narrator's flight in and around and across the Atlantic. So let's start with the story of the shark's jawbone. In Western literary imagination, the mysteries, can you hear me now? Am I projecting okay? In Western literary imaginary, the mysteries of the sea have been heightened by a menagerie of menacing sea creatures such as the Scylla and the Charybdis of the Greeks, the Leviathan of the Hebrew Bible, but I want to focus on the shark, which is one of the top predators. Sharks are part of my history. As a former scuba diver, I swum with sharks. In fact, I stopped being a diver because sharks were chasing us too much. Has to do with nosebleeds. They kind of like blood. As a child, I was taken to the Barbados Museum to see a shark's jawbone, a big one. And it had once been in possession of my family. According to a document in my family archive, Edmund Knight Taylor, a solicitor and an avid fisherman, lived in the sea at Brandon's, just outside of Bridgetown, the capital of Barbados. In 1880, he was visited by Prince George, the Duke of York, in the British fleet visiting the island. He had heard that Taylor had captured the shark and preserved its jawbone, and he wanted to see the jawbone. And so as the story goes, Mr. Taylor put the jawbone over the Duke's head. And so the narrative in the file relates that this is now a very important archival document for a museum, that is the shark's jawbone, because the Duke would become the future George V. And so it goes to the museum and becomes a part of the museum. So I want to look a little bit about what's going on there. By capturing the shark, Taylor had demonstrated a Victorian male sensibility towards mastery over a savage beast. Königsberger argues that the menagerie, including zoos, circuses, and the like, model empire, ordering the otherwise unruly economy of the imperial household, including alien bodies, practices, and stories. As a privileged white solicitor in a colonial enterprise, Taylor was modeling empire, but with a difference. He was doing it as a Creole white, not just as an imperial white. And in that respect, he was actually obtaining symbolic mastery over the future king, over the Duke, who would be the future king, his overlord. Herein lies the essence of white Barbadian Creole identity in its full ambivalence. As Lambert has demonstrated in white Creole culture, politics, and identity during the Age of Abolition, white Barbadian men of property countered 19th century British concerns about the tainted legacy of slavery by appealing to the idea of Barbados as Little England, as the place where, from the earliest days of settlement, Englishmen fought for the right to local self-rule, that is, for liberty against the usurpation of the Cromwellian state. Rather than being tainted Englishmen, as abolitionist rhetoric would claim, white Creoles saw themselves as more English than the English, as the true upholders of English liberty within a parliamentary system in a constitutional monarchy. Of course, this is quite ironic. But there are more ironies here. Whether self-defined as a Victorian male or Barbadian Creole, Edmund Knight Taylor met an untimely death when he drowned in an unusually rough sea while swimming off Brandon's home. And Ronaldo, the Caribbean coast can be very rough, as you know, and particularly dangerous. And so that's presumably when he drowned. The shark's jawbone may have been mounted in his house as testimony to the conquest of the ocean and its creatures, but nature's power had consumed him as it had Ahab and the Picard in Moby Dick.